So, we had mentioned this earlier, Ashley, but you have written a lot about the fact that your father was incarcerated for most
Mm-hmm.
of your life. And I'm sure, obviously, that's got to have, kind of a huge emotional and, mental and familial burden. But I'm also interested specifically in hearing about what that's like financially,
Mm.
because I know it's got to be among the most exploitative and financially predatory systems out there
Yeah.
and has a huge impact on families and loved ones of incarcerated people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, was that something that you were aware of growing up? Was that a cost that really factored into your lives?
I mean, absolutely. I think the barrier of the cost was very evident in our lives in a number of ways. I mean, my mom, like I said, I was 6 months old when my dad went to prison,
Mm.
and he and my mom were married, and he went to prison, and he had been in prison for maybe a couple weeks or something like that when my mom realized she was pregnant with my brother. So,
Oh my
so
God.
very quickly, my mom went from being a married woman with one child to having her husband be in prison and being alone with two children. And I don't know if people know this. Like, I think a lot of people know that you can sort of get a job in prison, but I don't think they know that there is no regulation for wages of a prison worker.
Mm.
So at different points my dad was working and trying to work to send money back to my mom for whatever, but he was making 25 cents an hour
Mm.
working inside of the prison. And I know that growing up, my mom made a conscious effort not to disparage our dad
Mm-hmm.
to us. She never said mean things about our dad, and she never was like, your dad's dead, and if he wasn't, blah, 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 whatever. But my mom at times would get angry, and one of the things she would say was, nobody's helping me.
Mm.
I have no help. Your dad loves you, but he can't help me. And there was always this idea that if my dad got out of prison, or if he came home, or if he had been around, our lives would be so much different just because of whatever income he could bring into our home would have been helpful. On top of that, before my dad got out of prison, I have three memories of seeing him in person. I don't have any memories of being really around my dad in any way, any consistent or significant way, because we just couldn't afford to go.
How far away was it?
It depends
He moved around.
because he gets moved around.
Mm-hmm.
At any given time, as I remember it, he was anywhere from 2 and 6 hours away, depending. But prisons are, as we know, often in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
There aren't hotels. There aren't things like that. There isn't much to do with kids or anything around there. If you go to the prison, you have to have the gas to go. You have to be able to wait in a waiting room for quite a bit of time because you never know how long it's going to take. And you run the risk that even if you wait in that waiting room for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, there's still a pretty good chance you're not going to get to see the person
Mm.
just because they're going to say, sorry, we ran out of time. So you can't. And so now you have to drive several hours back from wherever you came without even having the interaction. So then you think, okay, maybe they're younger, you stick to phone calls. Phone calls are not just phone calls from prison. You have to pay to communicate with the person who's in prison, which means you have to pay for phone calls as well. There's no such thing as a free phone call when it's coming into or out of prison for an inmate. You have to pay for those. Um, Even now, one of the things that they're starting to do with prisoners that I'm very, very, very much against is they're trying to get rid of in-person visits altogether and essentially have them communicate via iPads or iPad video, and you have to pay for the minutes to be able to see them and have that conversation with them. You have to pay right now in most jails to be able to communicate via email. Like, it's an account if you like don't write physical letters, or if you can't write physical letters for some reason, you actually have to download an app that you put money on for coins so that you can send each other messages. And that costs quite a bit of money as well. And so the human connection that is required for healing and for the maintaining of families um, is not allowed unless it can be profited from by the system at this point.
That is horrifying.
Yeah.
Is out of curiosity, and please feel free to not answer. Are your parents still together?
No.
Do they have? Do they see each other?
Yeah, they're friends.
Oh, that's good.
Like, my mom and dad, it's really weird because my dad got out of prison and I went to go see him, and I wanted my mom with me, which was, I don't usually go to my mom for comfort.
But it must have been so anxiety induced.
Yeah, but I was like, Mom, you have to come with me. And she was like, okay. And she came with me, and it was their first time seeing each other in 20 years.
Oh my God.
At least. And it was my first time seeing him in about 5 years. And he didn't know I was going to be there. And so he definitely didn't know she was going to be there. And he walked into the room at my aunt's house, and he hugged me. And, you know, black folks nuts. My aunt starts screaming and yelling, "Thank you, Jesus!" You know, whatever. And I'm just like, oh, okay. But it's also really lovely, and it's this amazing moment. And then he sees my mom, and they immediately start just like joking with each other and like have this weird rapport where he's like, "Hey girl," you know, whatever. She's like, "Oh, I see you, blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "Yeah, well, you ain't da, da, da." And I'm like, because for me in that moment, that's my first memory of seeing my parents talk to each other.
Oh my God.
I don't have another memory of my parents speaking directly to each other face to face.
That is unbelievable. That is unbelievable.
My mom helped my dad. As soon as he got out, she helped him get places, get things that he needed. Her ex-husband, my like stepdad, Donald, he took my dad to his first job interview. You know what I mean? Like, everybody, like I said, it's a fan, like, everybody comes together. Everybody's going to help you get up. Everybody's going to help lift you. People want to see you rise. They want to see you get your stuff together. It's just that, and I think that comes from that understanding of how little we're all dealing with in that situation.
Right. And so many formerly incarcerated people don't even have that.
So many don't have that.
So many have no one.
My dad said he came out really prepared to start his life over with nothing and no one, because there's just the chance that nobody would want
anything to do with him.
And instead, he was welcomed into his sister's home. His brother came and picked him up. His brother took him to go see, his parole officer immediately. His brother, my Uncle Clarence, brought him to me, you know what I mean? Like, and I was there, like, I was able to help my dad with a few things. He flipped out because I took him to, like, a store, and I was like, well, you got to get clothes, like, you don't have any clothes. Or what you have is, like, fine, but that's not enough clothes. So let's just get you, like, some shirts and some jeans and, stuff like that.
Makeover.
And he was, but it was nothing.
Right.
And he was like, because he hadn't been in a store in 30 years. My dad didn't know what a cell phone was. My dad didn't know my laptop freaked him out. He didn't know how to pump gas. Like, there was just nothing. When my dad went to prison, Reagan was president. Like, people don't understand. And it is the strangest, most wonderful thing in the world to have him able to be a real part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no, I'm telling you, Chelsea, I will never forget that moment of seeing him and my mom just talking with each other like friends. I will never ever forget that moment. And like that, it's priceless. That is a priceless moment. And I just think that that is harder to come by in groups where people have not lived a certain kind of struggle and they don't know a certain kind of struggle. I think part of why my mom was able to just be like, hey, was because she understood nothing's been easy for either of us,
Right.
you know? And when things aren't easy for people, you can sit around being mad about why they weren't easy and whose fault it was, or you can get to work trying to heal, trying to fix something. And I think that's what she chose.